Hi, everybody. I'm Debbie Davis, and I'm an alcoholic. Breathe really deep. Okay. I just want to first start off with my thank yous. And I want to thank the retreat committee for the invitation. It is such an honor and humbling to be invited to participate at State Line. As many of our speakers have already said, there's just this tremendous amount of people that I too admire that have been my teachers, and to be in this room of tremendous activists that I get to be amongst you. And so thank you for that invitation. I want to thank Craig because he helped me so much when I got here, and we had such a great time at the treatment meeting that night, and with Bob, to carry that message and to remember from whence I came, because I was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous through a treatment center. My husband, Kent, who has given me a tremendous amount of support and has helped me become the member that I try to be today. So thank you. How I've learned about membership, it's evolved. It's evolved because of my experiences based on my past, and that is my sobriety date. I've had a couple sobriety dates before, but my current sobriety date is February the 8th, 1976. So I've been walking with you for 41 years in Alcoholics Anonymous. So with that, it has had lots of changes throughout the years. It's shown me and evolved because of my home groups. I have lived in 4 different parts of the country, and that's why I've had 4 different home groups. Each of us taught me in the community different aspects and things. It wasn't that they did it wrong, it was just different, that's all. And I also, as a result of that, had 4 different last names, so that kind of helped with different membership. In sponsorship, I've had 3 sponsors. My first 2 have gone on to the big meeting, as we say. And my current sponsor, Millie G., a member of the Pacific Group and has been for her whole 47 and a half years. She's been my sponsor for 30 plus years. Still sets the example beautifully at 95 with 5 committed meetings a week, and still wears high heels to her home group night. Yeah, rock on. Go, Millie. By the taking of the steps, by sponsorship, by sponsoring people, membership's changed and evolved for me. By the traditions, by learning how to apply them in my life, because they were very clear that being a member of a home group, I needed to learn about the traditions, but also want to learn how to apply them in your personal life. And when I began to do that, I began to have different relationships, and membership began to be more rooted in here for me. Through service has had many rotations for me, and I love rotating, and because I know I can. It's good to have take responsibility for a commitment, but it's dangerous for me to take ownership. You can't have it. This is my forever commitment at the greeter line or at the birthday girl or whatever. It's dangerous for an ego like mine to own something like that, but to cherish it, take good care of it so that I can pass it on strong and better, hopefully, and for carrying the message, for evolving a relationship with God, my higher power. That relationship has evolved because of membership. But membership for me didn't come just like walk-in day one. Even though we have the written words for third tradition, that's primarily where we get our definition. And in the short form, it says the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. That, for me, that kind of implies you've drank, okay? Some areas it doesn't seem to be required anymore. I know if I drank, I'd probably have a drinking problem. Does that qualify? No. That's our great gift. It's the identification of our drinking. This is, again, where it starts, so we know what you're talking about. This is the only place for the alcoholic. This is why we have, as Mike mentioned, over 500 organizations have asked to borrow our steps for their problems, obsessions, addictions, dilemmas, whatever they might be called. But this is the only place for the alcoholic to find that identification and focused help. But I love the long form of the tradition. And it says, our membership ought to include all who suffer from alcoholism. Hence, we may refuse none who wish to recover. Nor ought AA membership ever depend upon money or conformity. Any 2 or 3 alcoholics gathered together for sobriety may call themselves an AA group, provided that as a group they have no other affiliation. Now, many of you, if you're familiar with the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions book, you've read the stories, read about the membership rules that they gathered up, and that if all of them had been in place at that time, none of us could have gotten in here, not even our co-founders. I mean, clearly this room is full of, fallen women, queers, crackpots, asylum inmates, all that. Cheer yourself on, right? I mean, y'all are in here. It's like they should have made that the requirement, a second requirement. And so they said, no, we can't. No, so we're just going to simplify this thing. If you have a desire to stop drinking, we can help you with that. If you suffer from alcoholism, we've seemed to have found a solution. You've read the story about Ed, the atheist, and his thing about nonconformity. You read the story about the person coming in, knocking for admittance, but with problems more stigmatized than alcoholism. And I love the fact that it's never specifically identified in there, so you can just let your imagination run wild so that you can't say, well, I don't qualify because. So we have the text, we have the description or the definition, but I think for myself it goes, I've taken it another level. What does membership mean? To me, it's more than a word or a stamp. It's an action. It's an action word. And so when I think about what does the word member mean, I look it up, it means to be a part of. When I look at the word attender, it means to be present at. And so I looked at member, starts with the word letters M-E. Membership starts with me. Attendance starts with A-T, at. Am I a member or am I an attender? And I know for a long time, and many times, I have simply been that attender. When I was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous, as I said, I got sober 41 years ago. It means I also got sober when I was young. I like being 41 years sober and 39 years old. I like that. Pretty soon it will be. We drank in our past life, born and ran into AA. Science may one day accomplish that, right? But it hasn't done so yet. But when I look at those early days of being introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous, what that looked like is you don't drink or do any other things, and you go to AA meetings. And because I don't want to do anything more, this is all I really note in my mind. I've got to believe they said a whole bunch more, but that's all the things I'm going to do. And so I attended AA meetings. First, I was taken to them, and then when I got out, I had to go to at least one AA meeting a month. okay, I'll go to 1, get the little paper signed. I'm not going to go to 2 and look like I'm joining AA or anything like that. And so I went to my 1 meeting a month. But of course, the way that I walked in when it started, I left when it was over. I'm not giving anybody any opportunity to share with me their experience, strength, and hope. And so 7 months go by, I drink again. I am an alcoholic to the core. And so when I had that 2-foot drop from my head to my gut, that I am an alcoholic, that began for me again, as mentioned before, that 1-degree shift. And I began to have a different experience and a different relationship with you. And I was willing to do whatever it is you do. And I didn't know what that was, and so I went to my weekly meeting the next day, and I asked those old-timers, what do you do to stay sober? And that's when they gave me sobriety date, home group, sponsor, steps, traditions, service, and message. And so with that, I start taking a look at how my involvement in membership has changed, how I've looked at it differently. And I love Mike's analogy yesterday, gosh, time flies. I think it was yesterday morning when he did history and the perception, and he did the visual of holding out the dollar bill. Steve would see one side, Mike would see the other side. It's the same dollar bill, the same currency and use of it, but they would see things differently. And that has been spinning in my head, and that's how I see membership. If I'm doing it now, it's okay. If I stop doing it and you're doing it, it's probably not okay, right? So I judge membership based on whatever I'm doing is okay at the time. And I remember that one example was, I was probably many years sober, and this one fellow was a very well-known person, and he said to me that he only cares what people do in the AA meeting. And I thought, well, I thought this was the kind of thing that you kind of took outside into all of your affairs. And then I realized that he was having a very public affair. And so that's why it was okay in the meeting, because outside of the meeting was off limits. So I'm kind of looking and judging that, and then I'm thinking, oh, yeah. For about 6 years, I used to date married men. Oh, well, okay, so maybe when I was doing that, was I a good member? In my mind, I would have been yes. And so I began to look at different things of how I've judged membership of others and how it's important that I don't. Now, I still might appear, but that is that defect of character, that self-righteousness that constantly plagues me. And so how I've learned to change some of that, to take that to different, I want to share some of the things that you've shown me. And so when they talk about judging membership, we often have people come in to the rooms who don't identify as an alcoholic. Sometimes I think there's some certain code book they should know before they walk in the rooms, right? We have a closed meeting, and we go around the room, and even though it says, if, the blue card, paraphrasing, if you don't have a problem with alcohol and need to find an open meeting, we'll help you. Anybody need to find an open meeting? And yet when we go around the room and we identify, somebody will say, and I'm Joe and I'm an addict. The antennas go up, the radar goes off, how they get through security, it's, whoa, this is a closed meeting, how'd this happen, right? We didn't vet everybody who came through. That we decided that after the meeting, the newcomer liaisons would be sure to have a chat and just say, hi, and do you know about, just about AA and this kind of thing and so forth. But I don't believe that should be left solely to those two people. I have a responsibility to do that as well, to welcome that person. Usually the person who says that doesn't really know They've been given misinformation. They're new. They're in their first 30, 60 days. They're still kind of figuring out what's their right hand and their left hand. I mean, it's just, so, let me have that compassion of lack of information. And so at this group, it would be my joy to, when we circle up, and because I know how fast I was scooting out of those doors, so what I decided to do is I just waddle on over. I'd sashay on over. And I just happened to grab the new person's hand that said they were an addict, and hello. And we would say our closing prayer. And whenever we do the amen, and I won't let go, I've got them. And so, because if you don't do that, they're gone. Okay, so I take an opportunity to share my story. And I just say simply, I heard that I want to welcome you, and I heard you say that you were an addict. Have you ever had a problem with alcohol? And the answer might be yes or no. If it's yes, then I say, well, I would encourage you to also say you're an alcoholic. I don't really get into the drop the addict thing. I think that's for their sponsor, and I don't want to kind of overload people. But I do want to say because this way you will be more a part of than apart from us. And so in those early moments, I tell them, I used to identify as something else too. I went through a treatment program, and I was told I was chemically dependent. Now that's a mouthful, but this way insurance covered everything, and so I came out into a community where other people did that. So I didn't seem odd. I wasn't doing it to be different. I wasn't doing it to be cute or get extra attention. I just did it out of ignorance. And so one day I'm sitting at the Gopher State Roundup, and I'm with Freddie Yu, and we're at registration. Bob and Linda know them. And this girl comes up, and I said, "Are you AA or Al-Anon?" She says, "I'm chemically dependent." I check the AA box. Away she goes. And he says to me, quote, "What the hell is that?" And I said, "Well, that means we're alcoholic and drug addict." He said, "Hold on, just a minute." He says, "Here, we're just simply alcoholics. Because that new person coming in the door is not going to know what in the heck that is. And they're going to think, gosh, I came here I can't stop drinking and I need some help. Maybe this isn't the place I thought it was." Now, he didn't tell me to start changing how I identified myself, but it was very clear. I had just gone from ignorant to informed. Now, with that new information, I have a choice to make. Am I going to defend my right to say what I am? You can't tell me what to call myself. You can't make me do anything. That's correct. But I will separate myself from you even more, now almost with intent. But if I adjust that, make that what I like to call that gentle conformity of this tradition, if I make that change, and even though it kind of choked out a little bit and alcoholic felt kind of lame, the thing of it is it made my membership roots go down a little bit deeper. And I became more a part of instead of just attending. There was one of my home groups, my third home group. Again, I've seen how I've judged how people carry the message or how they portray themselves. And this gal she was asked to do 10 minutes that particular night. So she gets up to the podium. I'm like 12 years sober at this time. I'm in the very high self-righteous phase of my development. I mean, even more so than normal. This became the I know what's right for everybody and everything, and I'll be happy to tell you about it. And so I'm sitting there listening to her tell her story. Now, the group I was at, they had 5 sections. And there was like a quadrant on each side here, and then an aisle and a quadrant there, and then back here we called it the half measures room, or section 5. You could see the speaker, but you would not catch alcoholism from back there, okay? So it was populated with new people. And so she was telling her story, and she said that, of course, they were sitting in section 5. Her and her husband came together. He was the alcoholic. He really had a problem. And of course, they were mirrors of each other. But he's got the problem. She just came to support him. And she said the first speaker got up, and there was this woman, and she was nicely dressed, and she, had her makeup on right, and she spoke really nice, and she's sitting back there thinking, man, I never would have identified. I could never be that. And she said the second guy got up. There was a guy, and he's got long hair and every other word's the F-bomb, and he's this, and he's got tattered jeans and hippie days. And she said, I'm like sitting back there thinking, I really identify with this guy. And she goes on to tell her story. And I'm sitting there in that front row judging. I'm sitting there thinking, now, here I am at 12 years sober, and I approve of the first speaker because of their presentation, and I judge the second one because I'm thinking, hey, this isn't the 70s anymore. Cut that hair, get a collared shirt on, clean up your language. This isn't the bar room. I'm sitting there in my mind judging this guy, and yet this is the guy that God used to reach back into section 5 with his gentle, loving hand and bring her into the rooms. How am I to know? How am I to know who's going to bring you in, who brought you in? And yet, would I call him a better member, a lesser member, a second-class member, a so-so member? Look what he did. And he helped humble me in my judgment. And I never even met the guy. Their sponsorship. I do have things that I ask people that I sponsor to do, so maybe you'd call those membership of sponsorship requirements. I don't know. I do know how many people I sponsor because I'm in active communication with them on a weekly basis. And as a sponsor, I take on a choice of responsibility. Doesn't make me a better sponsor than anybody else. It just makes this the way that I want to pass on the 3 legacies. And I take the women and one man that I sponsor through the steps, through the traditions, through the concepts, and the service manual. I want them to have this full touch of the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. I ask them to go to a certain number of meetings a week and be in service and things like that. And if any of those things are not of appealing to them, that's fine. Then you don't need me. You don't need me. Because you will be expected to pass that on. And if you don't want to, another sponsor will be just fine. But you won't need me. Because I don't have time, nor will I make time for takers. But if you're willing to be in service and carry this, I'll give you everything I got. And I do have that passion about sponsorship, and that we carry this on, and that they carry it on, and so forth. And I know this room is full of such active people and sponsors, so I'm speaking to the choir, so to speak. But it is something that to me is very vital, because I am the taker. I know how to just do for me and give to me, and it's all about me. I know that. That's why you were really clear in the beginning. Oh, no. You have to learn how to start being that giver. And what about your home group, membership in your home group? What does that look like? Do you get there early? Do you stay late? Do you have a commitment there? You know, to me, again, am I a member or an attender? I might attend other meetings, but in my home group, I'm an invested member there. I open the gate at 7 and I close it at 10. It doesn't make me more special member. It just makes me one who likes to get there early and stay late. I've set out the literature. I've been a member of this current home group for 17 years, and I've had all kinds of different commitments. And I haven't had all of them yet. We have over 50 commitments in our little group. And I love being in service to that group. I love being a part of the heartbeat. I love being a part of work in the room and meeting those new faces, because that to me is a part of membership. Not letting somebody else do it or thinking somebody will do it. Yeah, me. It's for me to get out there and do that. And if I have a sponsee with me who's new to my sponsorship, I find it much more helpful to say, come on, let's go work the room together. Let's go work the room. And I'm not looking for the people I know as much as I'm looking for the people I don't know. I don't know if they're a minute sober, still drunk, or 100 years sober. I want to find out. And I get those opportunities to be in service to that person. If they're new to the area, introduce them around. If they're still drinking, come sit by me. I'll tell you, that's a great treat. The waif of the used booze fragrance. Oh, I'm just glad it's on them and not me. You know what I'm saying? But I want to get them in the front of the room, not the back of the room. So what are you doing in your home group? What about your money in your home group? Billy said it well. Home group members contributor, or am I a contributor? I remember when I was used to putting a dollar in. I never gave it a lot of thought. And all of a sudden I started looking at, I have a responsibility here as a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, as a member of my community, as a member of my group, to bump that way up and double it in my home group. I feel a lot more connection to my home group with the larger amount. Whatever that amount might be for you is your business. But I feel much more connected. It's more thought in it that this is used to carry the message, where that dollar was just a thought. I was in a meeting the other night, and it kind of hurt my heart, but I really think it was out of just lack of anyone kind of bringing that out in our attentions. And I'm in this meeting and I'm watching. I don't mean to watch closely, but you can't help it sometimes, you know. I'm seeing who's putting what in, you know, and I see this gal who I know. She puts her dollar in. No opinion. However, after the meeting, she tells me that about a couple of really long, beautiful fur coats and how many St. John knit suits she has. I'm thinking, and you just put a dollar in the basket? Girlfriend, we need to have a conversation here, you know. Oh, I wish I sponsored her. Oh, you know. Yeah, get after that one. With love and kindness, of course. So sometimes I am thinking to myself, oh, they're a good member, or they're not much of a member. And I think to myself, good God, who am I to make that judgment? When did I start becoming the queen of judging that? In one of our checklist questions in the traditions, it says, am I willing to help a newcomer to their lengths, not mine? And I keep discovering more and more it's important for me to remember the journey of membership and then becoming an attender again, and then back into membership, probably attender again, back into membership, that it's been for me. When I think about the road narrowing, what comes to mind more for me is that, yes, people will die, people will drink, people may be moved away. That doesn't mean they stopped going to AA. They may have just moved or done something different. What it means more to me is it's the less I can get away with, okay? Again, I told you those first 6 years I dated married men. That doesn't work anymore. To be able to maybe steal from my employer, just like Masoon said, petty cash, my gosh, it's handy. Or stealing this or that, or pens or paper from my employer. That doesn't feel right the longer I'm sober. That's stealing. That's dishonest. And so that's what happens more to me, is my spiritual compass gets tighter for me. The expectations that I have for myself, the standards I have for myself grow. And what's really key is for me not to put those on other people, but to maybe be an example of change. Believe me, I am flawed. I make mistakes. I make amends. I've made a couple this weekend already, So it's not like I'm sprouting wings here. I am absolutely one of those. So I think about good and bad members, okay? And again, who's to judge good and bad? But I'm just using those terms to look at how I have thought about people. So I think, well, is it based on how often I see them? Maybe I only see them at one meeting a week. And yet they go to 6 or 7 or 15 meetings a week. Do I judge it based on how often I see them? Do I judge them based on my service work and what they are or are not doing? I don't know what all they're doing. They don't know what all I'm doing. That is for them to determine. I don't know what they have at home. Maybe they have small children and they're going to school full time, or they have a sick parent and they can only go to so many meetings or do so much service work. That's their business to find their spiritual comfort. It's not my business. I know people who have maybe a well-known or popular sponsor. Haven't called him in quite a while, they say. But what kind of our membership is that? Or maybe I have some gals who really just struggle to get sponsees or to have them stay. But you give them a service position, and boy, that's the last time you need to think about that. That is done, it's done well, and it's taken care of. So is it based on how many people you sponsor or don't sponsor, or how many service commitments you have or don't have? Is it based on how well you know the big book? Quote back and forth. We all know the people who can quote the book but can't stay sober, can't seem to put any time together. They all know, but there's something about these actions that just aren't happening. Is it a good member based on how many conventions they get invited to? They're speakers or non-speakers. I know plenty of people who have a powerful message who are just quiet little Joes, quiet little Janes. And they just are active and grounded in their community and in their service work. I remember two people that, again, I've learned so much from. I've learned from many who've done it well, many who've had the grace and humility that has carried the message far and wide, busier than most of us, certainly me. But there's a couple who taught me some great things. One of them was when I was in Atlanta, and this speaker came into town, and oh boy, it was exciting and very popular at the time, and oh, so-and-so's coming, and I hadn't heard of this person, and so I'm getting excited, all caught up in it, and so the time comes, the conference is there, and person's from California, and I kind of wanted to look puffed up and important, and I said, I know some people from California. What's your home group? And they go, Well, my heart sank. Because from that moment on, no matter what they said, they've already told me their story. For me, if my name, rank, and serial number is my sobriety date, home group, and sponsor. If there's a well, or an or a pause, that kind of makes me think maybe you don't have one. Maybe you do and you forgot. Maybe you just moved a week ago and you don't have a new home group or sponsor yet. But it sank my heart because what happened is all of a sudden, for me anyway, that person's credibility just kind of died. It became now entertainment. It became now really a nice message, but it didn't have any guts in it. It didn't have any authenticity for me. And it taught me, if nobody knows you in your home group, I better be very, very careful. Because that is my foundation area. This is the area for me to be tending and investing and taking care of. This stuff, honor, privilege, I don't take it lightly. I take my home group and my community very seriously on its health and welfare. The other guy I remember that was a funny story. So this was at my third home group. And like many of us, our home groups have customs. As Billy mentioned, I love that difference between tradition and custom. And a custom was that we have a timer at our podium, and so that the meeting starts on time and it ends on time. And a lot of times time can get away from you so easily. So our timer girl said to the speaker, so I'm going to be timing you, and I'll give you a 2-minute warning, and then I'll give you a please stop. Everybody gets that message, okay? So the speaker gets up there, and he's kind of perusing the crowd and introduces himself, and he says, you know, I've just been told I'm going to be timed and that I only have so much time to talk. And we laughed. We thought that was also funny. Apparently he didn't. And he said, and you know what? That's about all I'm going to say. And he walked off the podium. Well, that's kind of unusual. And so, thank God, the guy who was the chairman, now, we were at the Women's Club at that time, and so you were on this stage, kind of elevated like this, but there were curtains, and so the leader usually sat off to the side in the wings there, and so he had this presence of mind. And he comes out from behind the curtain, and he turns back to Johnny, and he says, participation? And Johnny goes, mm-hmm. So now my mind froze. I would never have thought that. So he starts calling people up, and everybody's just kind of a state of stun, right? And so they get up and they mumble a few words in 5 minutes or whatever. And so meeting part's over. And I happen to be the treasurer at that time, so I get up and I'm walking down the aisle and I'm going across the halfway thing, the aisleway there, and somebody says, "Do we thank the speaker?" Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's all I said. But kind of the point behind that was, he told me, anyway, more about himself in 5 minutes than if he'd had the whole 50 minutes. And what it taught me is what the old-timers taught me. The people who've been walking this path and doing this longer than me. Don't believe your own press clippings. Not too long ago, I read in the Dayton, Ohio Intergroup, maybe there's some people from Dayton, Ohio here. In their June 2016, there was this really cute kind of little poem thing. I made a little couple changes to it, but it's about, are you a member or a tender? And I just thought it posed some really good questions for me. It says, are you an active member, the kind who would be missed? Or are you just content that your name is on the list? Do you go to meetings early and mingle with the flock? Or do you just get there late and criticize and mock? Do you take an active part to help the work at hand? Or just let others do the work? That's your current stand. Do you work on committees? To this there is no trick. Or leave the work to just a few and talk about that clique. Please come to meetings often and help with hand and heart. Don't be just an attender, but take an active part. Think this over. You know what you can do. If we said, calling all members, would that be calling you? And again, I want to stand up for membership. I'm not here to define your membership. I have evolved over these years. My course has been adjusted. The rough edges have been softened and continue to be softened. My black and white, closed mind, opinionated mind has been opened up to see all the color that there is, to be more open to it. I still might judge it. I still might think it's right or wrong. But maybe, just maybe, there is something a little bit more than you can do. Maybe a little more in the basket. Maybe work that room a little harder. Focus more on, maybe get there earlier so that you can feel the magic of the room come alive. Greet that new face. It may be your new next best friend. You never know. Now, we've had lots of great shares this weekend. And I know we're all tired and we're kind of saturated. So if you don't remember anything else I said, I hope you'll remember this, that membership begins with me.